So as was previously mentioned, the Pacific Data Hub is specifically not a SPC domain, so .org, because it's a platform that's for the good of the region. The idea is that SPC's got the ball rolling, but that we don't own this over time, that it ideally is owned by the Pacific, which is why we deliberately want to tie it to SPC. So pacificdata.org is the main page that comes up. The key part here is the search, and this is what we'll come back to in a minute. But there's also some other tools on the page. What I better also mention is, the idea of the Data Hub is that it's essentially a big library catalog. And so in some cases, data will be stored on the catalog or in the hub, but not always. And a lot of the content we have in there is being harvested from elsewhere. So it's the metadata that's being harvested that then has a link taking you to where the data is stored elsewhere. And so we'll come and have a look at the search in a minute. In the meantime, we also have a way in which we can filter by thematic areas. We have an overview of the data sets, which are basic Excel spreadsheets, links to databases, places where you can go to get data that's easy to use, what we call structured data sets. And we also have publications, and so here are PDFs, Word documents, where it's a bit more complicated to get the data and to do anything with it, but it's there. We have some dashboards and tools. The SDG dashboard is one of the things that I'll show shortly. There's the Pacific Data Hub.stat Explorer, which I'll also show, and this is essentially an evolution of the NMDI database that many people are very familiar with. We also have Pacific Map, which is a way in which we can visualize anything spatial in the Pacific Data Hub. We also have the Microdata Library, which is NADA. That many people know this as a NADA platform. And we also have a way in which we can select by country. And so we can automatically go and filter what's in the Pacific Data Hub according to country name. So if I click Samoa, we can see that there are 389 datasets that have been tagged as Samoa. Now, there's a lot that are still being updated to include tags, and some of the regional datasets are regional, which means it doesn't specifically have the country name, but it does have country data in there. Anyway, I'm not going to use this right for the moment. I'm going to go back up to the top, and I'd like to do a search for IMTS data. So doing a search here goes and searches through the whole database, everything that's been catalogued in there. And this first one is a regional data set, so it's got with all the countries, but I'd actually like to look at one that's been pre-filtered already. So in this case, one that's been filtered on Samoa. I have some basic sort of metadata that's coming from the dataset, as well as a summary CSV file that I can download straight away, and a PDF that's got some metadata. Now, what I want to do is I want to link to the database itself and go and actually explore and manipulate in the database. So what this is going to pull up is the IMTS data that we have in pdh.stat, filtered by Samoa. And there's a few other filters that have been, or things that haven't been selected that I can also add to this. So here we're looking at in US dollars, trade balance, imports, exports, as well as so total exports, including exports and re-exports. We can also go and have a look at all commodities. So that was summarized for all commodities. We can have a breakdown by commodity, which we have here. We can change the currency, so we can look at this only in domestic currency. Sorry, I've got both there. If I take US dollar off, then it will be only in the domestic currency. So here we have this in Tala. And this data can be downloaded as an Excel spreadsheet. It can be downloaded as a CSV file, and there's the metadata. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to search for population predictions, which is a data set that we maintain that feeds into things like our population pyramids and our population poster. But now this data is all in the Data Hub, and we've extended the time frame, and so we go from 1950 to 2050. using a combination of estimates for known years and for projected years, obviously projections. Here I'm going to use the whole region. And I want to go straight to that database. And what I can do here is I can go and filter on Samoa. So here I'm looking at annual data by default from 2016 to 2025. Now what I would like to look at is a population pyramid for this year. Or a mid-year projected population pyramid. So I can look at 2021 data. I can break this down by male and female. And then I can go and have a look at our age groups. Now this is more useful if I change the layout, and I can basically do that. So here I'd like sex as my column. And so here I can see male and females for all the age groups, and then we've got total at the top, so all ages. So essentially this is a population pyramid, and the nice thing with this database is we can connect to it through something called an API. So we can pull this data out into visualizations, into websites. And in fact, on the SDD website, we have done exactly that. And the same thing can be done on NSO websites or other ministry websites. We've got plugins that can be added to allow people to visualize the data. So here we have the population pyramid for Samoa here for 2020. And we can go and even look at the animation over time. And I can even go and look at the base data behind that, which will take me back to the database that I was just looking at. The last thing, excuse me, I would like to search for is coming back to, okay, I would like to go and have a look at a data set that's coming from the NADA repository. Oh, and in fact, I'll search for this directly in the main catalog. So let me give me an exact hit. Okay, here we go. So this is coming from NADA, where we've harvested a little bit of publicly available documents and so forth. But the idea is that this could link to a NADA system that's also hosted by an NSO. It's just using the API to harvest the content, and that link then directs us to where it's stored. And so here we've got the usual information that we have in a NADA: documentation, data description, and access to microdata if it's available. Okay, I would also like to show the SDG dashboard, which I can get to from here or from the front page. And the SDG dashboard is built over the top of the indicator database. And so all the data that we find in here is stored in pdh.stat. And we have some visualizations that you can also connect to the source for. So we can go and look at the data that's behind it. But these can also be saved, put in reports and all that sort of stuff. We've got bar charts, but on in other goals, we've also got time series and pie charts and so forth. And then the last thing, excuse me, is specific map, which is how we can map data that's stored in the data hub. And so anything that's in the catalog that's spatial, so GIS layers and things like that, can be mapped straight away. What we've also done is we've got a special connection to the .stat database, which at the moment is primarily national data. So we can use the exclusive economic boundaries to display data for the region. Now here I'd like to go and have a look at some COVID economic impact indicators that are compiled by colleagues here in SDD, getting publicly available information from counterparts from websites and so forth, so we can monitor a bit what's going on with COVID. We have a whole range of indicators in that data set. And so if I'd like to look at, for example, government expenditure as a percent of GDP, here it's 2008. So 2008, we don't have some countries. let me jump a bit further forward. I hope this is a good data set for me to have picked. We can also animate it, as you can see here. Okay, so that wasn't the best data set, unfortunately. I didn't test with that data set. Trade balance, I think, is a more complete data set for the region. And if I go and have a look at a bit later on, okay. So here, for example, in 2015, we can also go and click on one of the countries and see the value for that country for that year. We can also look at the time series for the whole data set. We can even expand that. So there's a way of being able to visualize the data over time and look at a chloropleth map. So a map like this of the region at a point in time. The last thing that I just want to very quickly show is that there's a help file that's associated with the Data Hub. So here there's a user guide that has help on everything that's on there. So how to use some of those key different areas, how to use the data catalog. So we have a user guide with a little YouTube video. And these 4 sections all include YouTube videos to give an overview. In .stat, we also have a plugin section because there's plugins that allow users to connect automatically to that data from Excel, from Power BI, from R, Stata, and Python, which means that scripts can be set up or Excel spreadsheets can be configured so that every time it's loaded and refreshed, all the data sets that are in there get refreshed, and that means graphs get updated, pivot tables get updated, and so forth. So that's very, very useful. And there's also information for the API for people that want to connect through their own programs and things to the database. So this is also a way that people can harvest from us in the same way that we harvest from the World Bank, from the ADB, and from other sources, so that the Pacific Data Hub ends up becoming a repository for data and information about the Pacific all in one place. But that doesn't mean that data is all created and stored on the Data Hub. It's coming from multiple locations. So now I'll stop there. And if there are any questions, obviously this has been recorded, which means that they can be sent via email or to the Pacific Data Hub. There's a chat on the website. We'll be happy to answer any questions.